What's up? So I'm gonna try to do like a decent job in this video. It's it's easy to talk about this sort of thing, but it's difficult to actually, like do something about it. And even if I say these things and like I clarify it as much as I can, people are always gonna take my words and kind of run with them. Even if they do take my words, but it's more like they're not necessarily my words that I'm speaking. These are just kind of messages that I'm relaying. Um, and that's usually a lot of what like human. I'm gonna try and stay on track, but I just want to give this like little spiel first. It's That's what a lot of communication just is. Is like if you read something, maybe you tell people about it, or maybe it influences who you are like in the future somehow. You listen to music, you watch movies. It's like usually you just like, kind of relay the ideas that other people have put into your heads, um, and people see that as like a bad thing. And you can have your own like thoughts and original thoughts, or maybe like a unique perspective on like looking at like a certain situation or information. Like you can kind of reinvent sort of thing, some stuff, and like give a better perspective on it than people have for the past couple centuries. Or maybe your perspective on it is like now is the time to give it, because like if at any point in history now we're receptive to it. So that's just kind of what I'm trying to do now. And I'm going to try and communicate this as best as possible, because I think this is a good message to get out. Um, and it's my way of giving it out. And there is like an appropriate way to act it out. And it's not like difficult to act it out, but it's just like it's not always easy, because you lose sight of it or you get tired of doing it. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense because it just doesn't. I'm not centered. Because it just doesn't seem to benefit you really. So I'm just gonna get to it. It's already been 2 minutes. I'm sorry, but I guess I just talk a lot when it comes to these things. So basically, there's gonna be three things that I talk about here, right? And I'll just kind of go through them. Hopefully, like this little format is helpful, and I can continue doing this, because like I do get a little bit too off track when it comes to speaking in these videos. So when you love another person, perfection is going to be like in you. And when I say perfection, like I think most people know what I'm talking about, but it's like obviously like I'm religious. Like if you've seen any of my other channels, this is more of a like I speak more about religious stuff, but there is a path for non-religious people to, I think, come to religion, one, or to also be like virtuous. Because like I'm not saying I am a virtuous person, but I do think I have the information for it. Otherwise, I wouldn't believe in the system, because like it's a system that I don't live up to, but I do want to like say this is the system to live by, and I need to be held accountable just as much as anybody else, and this is the way to do it, right? So the message is like love another person or love each other, and perfection, or God, obviously for like my religious people, Catholics, Protestants, God will be in you, and you can walk towards him, you can walk in him. And it kind of goes a little bit further, a little bit more detailed, but I'm going to keep it pretty vague and broad. So when you love another person, it's essentially almost impossible to go wrong with it. Like people mess up all the time. They get the idea of what it means to love wrong. A lot of people think it's acceptance, tolerance, liking somebody, being kind. Other people think it's just being like tough and like always trying to like make somebody do something. This is the best for them, and like that's the like a lot of those are like kind of the correct idea, but they're not necessarily the way to go. And I agree with Thomas Aquinas, and Bishop Barron is kind of the one that gave me the idea that this is probably the best way to define love. And there's been also, I think most Catholics kind of ascribe to this idea of what love is, and it's to will the good of the other. And I'm very thankful that these people, I've found them on the internet, and I think they've done a really good job of showing people what that there are answers to these questions. You don't have to just give up. There are answers to a lot of these questions that people just don't have the answer to. Like, what is love? It's like, it's such a complicated question to a lot of people. And I don't think it needs to be. I don't think it needs to be a complicated question. I think it needs to be an almost impossible standard, a complicated way of living, because it's just, how hard is it to do that? You know, to will the good of the other, to not only want it but actually do it, right? So when you love another person, you want good for them and you do the good for them. You also have to have a proper understanding of what good is, and I know I don't have a proper understanding of what good is all the time for every person. So that's why I think getting to know a person, like having, like building up that trust with somebody, and then also, you know, like being able to see the good in that, you know, the good, like you can expect certain things out of that person. Like only really then can you properly love them. If not, then it's like, it's difficult. You know, the reason a lot of Christians think that Jesus like loved people so perfectly is because he already knew them. And it's the same thing with God. He already knows these people. But it's not enough to just know people, right? It's also like, you have to want the good for them for it to be like a complete or like a fruitful relationship with this person. And love isn't just this simply just like this thing of like, oh, you know, like I love you, that's cool, you know, we're gonna like go together and things are gonna be cool and beautiful. It's like, no, love can be to the point where you die for that person, and that could be the good for them. Or love could be to the point where you stop somebody from doing something you really want to do because it's not good for them, obviously. And when you do this, there's not, like I said, it's really difficult to go wrong when you do this, you know, but it's a lot more difficult when, you know, you have to do it for a lot more people, because you feel like you know them less, and people are going to always want all sorts of things, and it's just not going to be the appropriate way to want things. Like, it's like, you don't need this, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need this brokenness. It's not helpful and it's not necessary. And that's why it's like loving another person, it's such a simple thing to do, right? To will their good. So I think that's why it's such a simple answer, right? People don't need to like struggle so much with what the answers are. Like, use these answers until for whatever reason something else comes along and it's a better answer to the question, like what is love and how to love another person or whatever. But, you know, like when you finally actually understand that answer, it's like, what does it mean to do that? And that's why it's so difficult, because it's like we can never love perfectly. Even if we do love somebody, sometimes we don't really we don't actually do a good job of loving that person. If anything, we become, it's almost like you love somebody to the point where now it kind of becomes all about you. You know, like how can like this make you like feel better or whatever. And we've been in that situation where it's like love kind of turns a little selfish, and it's like, it's not necessarily about love anymore. It's more about, like, now it's like about the person, right? It's about you, and it should be about them, their good, like willing their good. And that's why it's such a difficult thing to do, but it's necessary if we want to walk in that perfection and actually do good things in this world, right? And I think that's why action speaks like volumes louder than the words, because a lot of people want things and they complain about things, and they'll just go, like, I'm like right now, I'm kind of just, you're just talking about all these things. But if you just keep people's good in mind, you have an idea of what the good for people is. You can ask them, but sometimes people don't necessarily always want the good or even know what the good is for themselves, right? Some people just want like to you know, divulge, you know, just let their passions run wild, and it's like, that's not always good for them, because it's going to leave them broken and hurt. But if you keep the idea that you're trying to do the good for people in mind, out of love, then you're going to get a lot done. And that's why, and that's like a very dangerous thing, but it's also, it's like almost one of the most powerful things you can do. It's probably the most powerful thing you can do, because you can have an idea of what's good for another person, and it's not, and you cause a lot of damage to that person and to the people around them, because you're trying to do good for them, but you just, if anything, you're causing more people pain. And it's not actually out of love. If anything, it's like this kind of warped selfishness. right? So that's why I think having a proper understanding of what the good is for another person is like essential. You have to really take time to figure that out, and once like it kind of makes sense to you, I don't really have the answer because it's probably it's like very specific to each person. That's why it's important for you to get to know them. Like what's good for this person. It's like if you go up to, let's say, a Catholic, a very devout practicing Catholic, and you're just saying, like, you need to take the Eucharist. You need to take the Eucharist. It's like how, like, you're trying to get them to take the Eucharist somehow, but they don't really know about it. And then you finally, like, I guess, execute your plan or whatever to get them to take the Eucharist, or you do something, to get them to take the Eucharist. It's like it doesn't really make sense to do that because they're already doing that. It's like, what's good for them? Like, what's going to better their good? So that's why it's like it's very difficult. It's like case by case basis. Like, you need to find out what's good for a person, and will that good. Like, if you don't, then it becomes a selfish endeavor, and you end up damaging even the people that you think you love. So when you do this, like, yeah, you're not gonna. You can't really go wrong, even if it causes yourself suffering. Because if you stop loving people, then it just becomes this. You just end up in a dark place where maybe not even as bad as you think, and that's probably even more sinister than if it's like suffering. And then you live like a lot of your life just kind of pursuing these things that you want. It's good for you, self-preservation, and it leaves you empty and with very little and a lot of regrets because the people that you've wanted to love this whole time never got that from you, and it doesn't benefit you at all. You don't have that perfection in you, like moving you towards it, towards the perfection, and also keeping your life fulfilled. So yeah, that's basically my first point, I guess. So also sharing love, that's kind of like another thing. It's like the idea that you need to share it, and that's where the idea of it being selfish, not, it like prevents that, right? So it's when you're sharing your love with another person, then it helps prevent you from being selfish and it turning into this vanity project, because how can I say this? So because when you share the greatest gift, right, or the greatest virtue with another person, that essentially is like the greatest good. And I guess like I'm kind of defining good, which I don't really want to, because it can be very specific to people. It's like when you share something with someone, it's usually you want them to have this. It's like you feel like it's good for them, or I guess you want to cause them pain or whatever. You want to feel better about yourself. But if you share something with them that you really need, but they also really need, it's like the ultimate act of what you're sharing with them. It's like if you're sharing love with another person, then you're also being loving in the same sense. Like, how can I explain it? It's like you're willing the good by giving them the good. Like, by giving them this gift of knowing what the good is, I guess, for humanity. It's kind of like an infection. It just spreads, and more people know about it. And I'm not talking about like this idea of love where if you love people, you're like this hippy dippy like loose-minded person that doesn't just like just flowing and everything's so beautiful and perfect. Love is like, it's not like restricted only to like perfectly beautiful and like like cookie cutter houses where everything's like so great. You have a good house, good money, good job, no mortgage, 3 kids, dog, white picket fence. It's a gift that you can receive, right, from other people, and I would say from God if you're religious, that you need to give away, because it's like it's the best to give away. It's like it only makes sense to give away. So if you want to be loving, let's say to people, it doesn't always have to be, like I said, these perfect, like everything's gonna be so beautiful. It can be in like situations where it's suffering, and that alleviates it sometimes, right? So Mother Teresa is a prime example of that, where she goes to Calcutta, and she's giving away all this love, and it spreads throughout the world, and everybody knows about her, and she's Saint Mother Teresa at this point. And it's this thing where you need to understand that when you give love away, it's like you can give it away in these like perfect situations where like everything's already good, but it's like the prodigal son. It's like you want these people to experience that. It's like you need these people to experience it. It makes the most sense. And that's the best way for the world to go forward. Even if you can't really give people money, even if you can't really give people like what they claim they need, it's like if you give them love, it's something they might even like be upset with you for, but it's nothing will compare to it. Because if they don't relish in that, or if they don't like appreciate that, then the rest of their lives, even if like they do make it out of that suffering, and like somehow they got money, things are better, it's like if they never accept like that love that you give them, or that people want to give them, they only accept like the material things, and that's usually what people kind of like want. They're like, no, I want money or whatever, I want this. It's worse off for them. Like, and it's not like you need to feel pity for them or like sad for them, but it's not going to be better. Like things are gonna be all right, but you're gonna be like, if you come from like a certain neighborhood or a certain town or a certain like country or whatever, and you make it out of it like all big and stuff like that, you have all these millions of dollars, you make it to Hollywood, you're sitting there in your really big house or whatever, you have your nice cars, but the rest of your family's back home. Or it's better back home because you can send money back and things are going really well. It still will leave you empty. And like a lot of these celebrities are like study cases where it's like they have everything but they have nothing. It's like it's not enough for them because it's never going to be enough. It's like, yeah, you can, money's good. Like when I say that, I don't mean to say that like you shouldn't go after money or you shouldn't go after these things, power, status, or whatever. But if it doesn't start with love, if you don't have that within your heart, it's going to eat you alive at some point. And that's why when I say if you want to go somewhere and give people this gift, it's going to make their life better, right? And I struggle with this. Like I talk about this because I think it's really important, and like I struggle so much with giving people this. But it's like it's going to make their life better in a way they can never repay you for it, other than maybe even giving you that love back, because it's such an infinite gift that it's impossible for you to touch. It's like no matter how powerful like a person can get, like a king, a famous person, whatever, it's like the love of like their parents, or the love of their siblings, the love of their spouse, it's immeasurable. It's like you'll lose it if you lose those people, because it's like it's an irreplaceable gift that you need to give to people because that's what they crave, right? But all in good faith, like if people need a hospital, build them a hospital. But, like if it's just gonna be this cold like mechanical thing that it's not made out of love, it's gonna be a while until like those people actually have their suffering alleviated. Like it's not that you shouldn't build the hospital, build it, or you shouldn't make the school, or you shouldn't teach these people, or make all this money or get all this status. It's just know that if you're in it and you're suffering, then you know that it's love that you're missing. And that's like, yeah, you can make more money and it'll make you feel better and all that stuff. The classic, money's the root of all evil. I don't really believe that to its extent. It's just it'll eat you alive, and it'll give you this false sense of love when it's like that's actually what you require. You can get love from like a homeless person. You can get love from people. It's like, but it's not this hippy dippy thing where it's always this beautiful, everything's kind. Sometimes it's hard and almost impossible. It's like, why would I love you? Why would I love these people? I hate them. But if you don't start with that, then like the darkest moments in your life and in human history, just like that's where it happens, when it's like that lack of love. And it's not always easy figuring out how to love people, but that's what's like the biggest quest of your life, is like doing that. It's like, yeah, people want money, you can give them money, but it's like, have you ever spoken to these people? Like, do you know these people? Like, try and like love these people. let your love mean a lot more to them than your money or whatever it is, whatever other material you can give them, right? And this one's kind of like a different thing, right? I'm gonna kind of jump to like a different topic because like, and I'll explain it at the end, like what it is that I'm doing in this like video, why I'm talking about it like this way, in this way. But when people do amazing things, recognize it. Like recognize it, not for like you need to like worship them or idolize them, right? But understand it, right? So I use, no, I'm not gonna. Okay, I'll go to like the religious a little bit later, like so people so it can kind of be a little bit more broad right now. But it's kind of like the story. It's like all these people that are like famous or powerful or just like have done great things. Even like Mother Teresa, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's famous, in the like monetary sense. It's like all these people that do these things. They're usually just regular people, but they do have some extraordinarily. They have fantastic talents, right? And usually people do in general. Like most people have something about them that's just like, if they did that, like they'd be pretty good at it. And it's like, it doesn't have to be something like singing. It can just be like, they're really good at like carving wood, or they're really good at like building houses, or they're really good at customer service, you know? And you don't have to have the fame to like be extraordinary at something like that. It's just like, a lot of people have amazing things about them, right? But also people like they can do some pretty much like amazing talents can also be used for amazing evils. We know all that, but it's this idea where like people that you know, right? I do this even to my family. It's like you underestimate them, right? It's like you underestimate this 5-year-old that's just stupid, you think, or you know like this sibling of yours that's dumb, or you know like this friend of yours that's just like it doesn't really seem like they're gonna amount to anything, but you probably see where I'm going with this. When people have the opportunity to capitalize on a talent, or the opportunity to just be chosen at random to like, you know, like change the world, one recognize like that you weren't chosen for that, right? So it's like you weren't chosen for that, and like that's fine. But like it's almost like playing your role, sort of a deal, but also understanding that like people, even some of the people that you disapprove of, can be chosen and used for like the greater good of humanity, or the greater good of your community, or like even your own greater good. They can teach you something about life, right? And it's like, now I'm going to kind of get a little bit more into the religious things. It's kind of like with Jesus, you know, it's like he performed all these miracles, like, and even when he did so, people didn't continue to follow him up until the point of his death, right? Afterwards, yeah. But when they saw it happen, they would leave him. Like, they left him, like, John 6 is a classic, you know, that the Catholics love to quote. But it's like they would leave him even after seeing all the stuff that he was capable of, right? This is like the perfect perfection of everything. And all the prophets that have existed, Moses, Prophet Isaiah, one of the 3 prophets of Isaiah that wrote the book of Isaiah, Prophet Jeremiah, right? It's like people knew these guys before they were chosen to be prophets. You know, some of them were old. Abraham is pretty old, and recognizing that anybody, this is more of like recognizing that anybody that even you might dislike, to the point of like you want them dead, like they wanted Jesus dead, can have the biggest impact on humanity, or the biggest impact on people's lives, and they have that power. And like if you recognize that, it can hopefully like help a person humble themselves to be able to love them more, rather than like have this, you know, like negative attitude towards them. Because we all have people in our lives, or you know, like maybe we want what they have. We don't think they deserve something, or we just don't think they're gonna amount to anything because they just don't really get their lives together. It's like, don't like let them like yeah, sure, like always want the good for them. If you're keeping it that, they don't have anything to worry about. But if like you genuinely disapprove of somebody, or you feel like, this person's whatever, then it's not that it's guaranteed they're gonna do something great, but it is guaranteed that you're gonna see other people that you didn't think were great, that are going to do something great. And it hopefully makes you reevaluate whether you should be feeling that way about people, and kind of goes back to the first 2 points that I was making, that like you need to share that love with them, because then it'll be a lot more easier, if they for whatever reason do become a prophet, you can follow them, right? And it's like, what are the odds that somebody's going to be chosen to do something great, by God or whatever? There's a pretty good chance. So it's like you have to kind of be careful about it. And keep people's good always in mind, even if you don't really know them yet. Trying to always figure out what's the good for them, and doing that for them is the best way to go. So what I was reading out of today was, it was 1 John 4:11 through 18 and Mark 6:45 through 52. These are just the mass readings for today. It's the 9th of January 2021. So that's why I read those. But I'm gonna post this like way after that, so it's kind of whatever. But yeah, I think this is like a good place to stop, and a good message to kind of like always get out there. Like, if I do respect the Bible so much, and I think it's the truth, then I think there's really not a limit on what you can get out of it. So always talking about what the message is for it is helpful. So that's what I'm trying to do, and also do it in my life. There's got to be examples of it somehow, but right now I'm not going to give any. So next video, deuces. Yes, sir.